Okay, let us go ahead and get ourselves started for today. Today we have a very action-packed agenda for you, so let's go ahead and dive on in. Okay, today we're going to cover a lot of good things about modeling that will really advance your skills, take you a little bit further in terms of all the basic building elements you'll need to kind of construct this first wood frame structure. That's part of your assignment 1. In terms of an overview of where we're going today, I've sort of written some of the topics up here on the board. We're going to start with the whole notion of walls and do a little bit more with walls in terms of their openings, and also pay a little more attention to curtain walls and some of the variations you have there. Curtain walls are a very powerful feature. But really the bulk of the day is going to be spent on floors and roofs. Those different elements you need to kind of enclose both the bottom and the top. And especially roofs is kind of a tough concept. Floors, people tend to get fairly easily because they're flat and it's pretty much putting a surface within a boundary. Roofs, you have a whole lot more variation in terms of trying to account for different angles and overlaps and overhangs. So we'll show you some examples about that. We're also today going to go ahead and spend a little time talking about the schedules and how you can either schedule the doors and window elements or add like formulas to them to go ahead and compute things that aren't automatically computed by the program but that you want to report out. So for example, in the assignment, one of the things I'm suggesting is that we actually compute the window area, which isn't reported, but we can kind of construct a formula very quickly that'll take width and height and give us that. So action-packed agenda, going through some of these things. Any questions as we get started? Any sort of logistical things people are going on with? I know that access is working now, so hopefully people are in good shape there. What else? I believe the Wi-Fi in the room may be down, so if you're struggling with trying to get onto a Wi-Fi connection, that may be haunting you right now. Actually, is Wi-Fi, from your perspective, is Wi-Fi working?
Yes.
It is? Excellent. Okay. Maybe they got it fixed. It wasn't working earlier today. Yay. That's good. Make life easier. Okay. Let us go ahead and get ourselves started. And I think the best place to start is just, with the walls and curtain walls. And let's see how far we can kind of push that. So if you can, please go ahead and open up Revit. And if you want to open up your models, that's fine. Or just go ahead and open up a blank document. But let's go ahead and we're going to do a little more playing around with different variations on walls. Kind of open up a slide here. On the current slide. Oops. Actually, not that. From the start. And then, okay, that's that. Let me close that one up because we're going to get to that one later. Beautiful. And I'm just going to open up a new architectural template to get ourselves started. Okay, so let's go back for just a second, talk about walls. Walls we've sort of been playing around with, choosing types of walls, putting doors and windows in walls, and it all kind of works out pretty well. Yes?
You know, in the architecture template, is there another one that's
Do you have any of the templates? Let's start with
I
that.
have like construction.
Just open up construction. That one's fine. And we should get to the architecture template because it's really just a file. Okay, but no, actually the way it sort of works, the construction template sort of is a superset of the other ones because you need to coordinate architectural, structural, all those kind of things together. But no worries, we can get that one fixed. Okay, as you're placing doors and windows as library objects, things tend to work out pretty easily. The windows and doors take care of cutting things out of the walls. They handle themselves nicely. The big thing is ultimately sort of finding the part that you want. So if you don't find the part, how you go out and grab some new ones. Okay, as well as going through and just changing the sizes if you want to. Just changing the parameters to make them taller or wider or whatever you need. Okay, so for the most part, those work out pretty well. There are times, however, when you need a custom opening, something that doesn't quite fit one of the doors or windows. And I just want to talk to you a little about walls and a feature of walls called wall profiles, which lets you customize the walls to really any arbitrary shape and boundary condition. Okay? Because that'll come in handy for you as you're doing some of your modeling. And to motivate that, let me just go ahead and start by drawing some walls. Okay, so choosing the walls, again, I'll just choose an architectural wall, and I'm going to, I'll give myself something that has a little bit of kind of information in it. It has a couple different layers. I'm going to turn that up to fine just so you can sort of see what's going on. And I'm going to draw some walls, just kind of in an arbitrary shape. As you're drawing walls, all these drawing tools let you go in switch modes if you want to part way through. I'm just drawing straight line segments, but there's some other cool segments or features you might want to play with. One is kind of the arced wall. If you choose the arced wall, what you can do is choose the tool, and how it works is you choose two different endpoints, and then you can sort of pull in or pull out, depending on what you want. It's going to be hard to make a completely clean corner. There's some other really nice ones in here too, just so you know about. Rectangles are actually always very easy to work with. So you can start with rectangles, or one of these geometric ones, perfectly round walls, or either an inscribed or a circumscribed polygon. And how that works is we can choose a polygon. Oh, I should actually give it a nice height. Choose the number of sides. For example, if you want to draw a 7-sided polygon, which is actually kind of a hard thing to draw, you can come on here, and it'll go ahead and take care of all that for you. So just give yourself some basic walls to work with. And I'm going to pop to 3D just so we can take a look at these. Okay, we're looking at our walls right now. In terms of working with these and putting sort of openings in the walls, let me tell you about a feature that walls have called a profile. And it might be easiest to think about this, actually, I should make my life a little bit easier in terms of illustrating this just by putting a very straightforward wall in, because it'll be easier to see what's going on. I'll go to the south elevation. That'll make it a little easier to see this wall. So this is the wall in question right here. As we go through and work with walls, they have a top and a bottom offset, and that's pretty much determining the boundary of what's going on. But you also have the notion of something called a profile, which is the shape that it's actually going to draw, relative to those constraints. And typically you don't see the profile. It's kind of hidden from you because it's just sort of assumed that it's going to be a nice rectangular profile and look like that. But you can actually go through and edit it. And when you do go through and edit it, you have a couple different sort of big options. We can do things like either kind of nip the edge off the wall and give it some sort of slope, or follow any profile that we want to in terms of cutting away parts of the wall. We can also cut openings in walls. Okay, so either one of those works. And if you want to give that a try, just get yourself to some wall, and you can either do it in 2D or 3D. Choose a wall, and when you choose the wall, the Modify Walls tab becomes available. And one of the choices there becomes Edit Profile. We'll talk about the other ones, attaching and detaching the tops and bottoms in just a minute. But start with Edit Profile. And if you choose Edit Profile, you will see that actually the wall is determined by this pink boundary line, very much like floors and roofs are. These pink boundary lines are always these continuous lines that ultimately geometry is created within. So if you would like to go through and change that boundary line, it's actually pretty easy. What you do is you draw some other line. For example, if I cut across a line like that, okay, I'm sort of nipping off the upper left-hand corner of the wall. Now, with all boundary lines, what you have to remember is that boundary lines want to be continuous lines. They don't want to have any overlaps, any overhangs, or gaps in them. So as I'm drawing this, what I actually need to do is go through and trim back this line and trim back that line so that it is just a single continuous boundary as opposed to having those intersections. So I can do that a couple different ways. I can grab this line and stretch it. And if I'm really good, it'll go through and catch that nicely. But another way I want to encourage you to start using is something called the Trim tool, which makes your trimming life a whole lot easier. And where you find it is up in the modification tools. It's right here. So TR is the shortcut from that. If ever I say TR trim, I just go into the Trim tool. And here's how trim works. Okay. Trim, it'll take 3 times to get it down ingrained in your brain, so you remember it in the right order, because it's sort of the opposite of the way it used to work within AutoCAD and some of the drafting tools. When you trim, what I want you to do is basically click on the parts of the boundary that you want to keep. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to click on this line, but in terms of this line, I want to click down here. This is the part I want to keep. That's the part I want to get rid of. Okay, and I'll click on that line because that's the other part I want to keep. So what I can do, it doesn't really matter about the order. I'll click, and it'll trim away the excess part. So let me undo that. And the most common mistake you make when you first start using it is you kind of click on that line without thinking about it, and that line, and you end up keeping the wrong part. So it is sensitive to which side you click on. So let's go ahead and pop this one and that one. trim that off. Looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and finish by clicking the big green check mark, and you'll see the wall is kind of nipped off. So just to show it to you, there it is in 3D. And kind of pull that up so you can sort of see it better. Now, you can do that in 2D. You can actually do that in 3D also if you want to. If you click on the wall in 3D and you say edit its profile, you'll again see what the boundary is. Torqued a little bit for the 3D perspective. But if I wanted to cut something off, oh, maybe I want to like round off the corner on the other side. A really cool tool that we have available is the fillet tool. Fillets are all about rounding kind of hard corners between things. So I can choose that, and maybe I'll click on this and I'll click on that, pull that in, give it a little bit of radius. You can kind of round off the wall that way. So you can customize wall profiles. Now, you don't do this all the time. Whenever you can, if you can just have it go up to a constraint and be locked to other things, it definitely is sort of a stronger way of relating it. This is sort of more for customization in specific places. And we'll show you a really cool trick when we get to roofs about how we can get this to go through and follow any roof profile. Actually, another really good use of this is when we're doing stairs. If you have a wall that kind of comes up under a stair and it gets cut off at like, the stairs angle so the wall's not poking up any higher. It's again a really good way of going through and kind of creating those sorts of walls. So this notion of editing profiles has a couple of cool features to it. One is we can always clip the boundaries off things. Okay. The other thing, and this is going to be common about everything we're going to talk about today, because it turns out everything we're talking about today all has profiles. It's all these profiles and creating geometry within those profiles. The other really cool thing you can do is actually cut holes in things. Okay, so here's the rule about boundaries and holes. If I want to go through and cut a hole in something, what I need to do, and it can be any shape hole, is basically have a boundary within a boundary. Okay? First boundary creates positive, the second boundary creates negative. Okay, so that's going to work. That's going to cut a big hole right in the middle of that wall. Just finish that up. And so, boom, just drops a hole out of it. Let me edit that again. It can be any kind of hole. It can be some triangular hole, doesn't have to be circular. Okay, that looks good. Finish that up. So again, a hole in that wall. People will often ask, though, about, again, boundaries and things. Let's talk about things that will and won't work. Okay, so in the scheme of things, is that going to work for cutting a hole? Sure, yeah, no problem there. How about that? Okay, good. That's not going to work. We have an overlap of some type. If I want to go through and make a notch like this, what I need to do is actually get a little bit creative in my line work, but not too awfully creative. It's not too hard. What I'll do is I want to basically kind of keep this part of the line. I want to keep that over here in pretty good shape. I'm going to basically do some trimming. But let me kind of show you a trick about trimming or things to think about trimming. As I'm trimming, and I go taking this side, and I decide I want to keep that side. The problem is I'm losing the other side too. I'm losing a little bit too much. Somebody can undo that. Same thing over here. If I would choose this and then choose that, I'd lose more of the line that I want to. So one thing you're going to find yourself doing when you're trimming and trying to adjust your boundaries is every once in a while, you'll end up splitting lines into two different segments, and then you can kind of trim one half versus the other half. So where that works is, again, in the Modify tools. There's the split an element. I get a little X-Acto knife that I can use to cut that line. And now, when I go through and trim, I can say keep this part and that, this part and that. Okay. Looking pretty good. Is it going to work yet? Not quite yet. We still have that one excess piece to hang out with. And if I try to finish it, you even get a little message like this saying, hey, lines must be in closed loops. Something in red it doesn't like. So it tries to give you a clue about what it's unhappy about. And if it's unhappy about that, you say, okay, no worries. I'll just continue. And then I'll just use the Modify tool and get rid of that. So I will finish that up. And voila. I now have some strangely notched wall. Okay, so again, don't use this all the time. If you have a window, use a window. It's much more powerful. But if you need to, head this way. Yes.
Would this be an appropriate way to make like a kind of pass through? You don't want a door.
Yes.
But what about like putting molding on it, I guess?
If when we get to that point, okay, then there is a type of object you should know about under the components. I don't know why it's under the door, or not under the door, it's under components. But you could load it, but this will really confuse you. I keep them in the doors folder because I think of it like a door. They have these, openings. Let's see if I can find them. Oh, are they here now? There's a door opening. So a door opening is a bounded, basically cutout. But even within that, there are cased openings. There's openings where you can start adding boundaries or adding information to that. So another library we'll share with you. Actually, Laddie reminded me about this. I want to put this library out for people to download. I have a big library called the Bentopia Library. It's full of lots of things that I've collected through the years. And in the doors, I have a bunch of different openings. I got square openings. I got openings that have a little trim around them. So again, when you want an opening that doesn't have a door panel, just the trim, we can have that. You got arched openings, different round arches, all sorts of exotic arches, some with trim, some without trim, elliptical arches. There's a lot of different openings. So I guess the rule is when it's a one-off, it's just this one time, go ahead and cut it. But as soon as it starts to be something a little more regular and repeated, then we'll think about how we can actually create a family that has the opening in it. Yes?
Now, good time to go over. I was looking at the Autodesk CEE. I don't know, it wasn't intuitive to me. I was wondering if there's something similar to SketchUp library where you just Google it, find it, and it goes right to your model.
Well, let's talk about that. It's a perfect time to talk about that. Okay, so the question is, it's kind of an issue, hey, I need parts. I don't necessarily have the part I want. Let me see if I can go out and find the part. Okay, and here's how you do that. Let's go over, and I'm going to go over to the land of the web and show you a couple different sites. I have two sites that are really my favorite sites. And I Google shutting down. Okay, let's come over here. I'm going to go to one site that I like called RevitCity.com. Revit City is kind of a really cool site. That's kind of a big user community. A lot of people put their stuff out there, just share it freely. It's kind of a big crowdsourcing, let's all share our library parts. And within here, I'm going to log in. It's paid. Yeah, go ahead and get yourself an account on here. They don't spam you. I can actually verify that after having been part of the site for many years. Get yourself registered so you can get in there because it makes it easier to download things. Log in. Okay, and now we can go ahead and do a little searching. They have a whole download section, and the download section has all these different parts organized in different ways. So we can go ahead and say, hey, let's go looking for some openings. Span that out. Then doors and frames. You'll have a lot of stuff out here. Louvered metal doors, funny sorts of garage doors, different things that we might want. Some of which are sort of common, some of which aren't so common. Like that's kind of a funny door, this 3-panel door that has this little funny arch top to it. If you have a file like this and you want to bring it in, here's what you got to do. You can either download now or add it to your cart, then it'll kind of do a bunch of them at once. But if I say download now, in my Mac, sometimes I have to sort of fuss with it a little bit in terms of getting it to download. Let me see if I can get this. What I'm going to do is actually, because the Mac browser and it's a text file ultimately has a tough time understanding it, what I'm going to do is just say save linked file, okay, which will go ahead and take it. I'm going to save it to my downloads folder. And let's see if it did it. I didn't see anything coming yet. Let's try that again. Click here to download. And here comes the RFI file, but it's going to come as just sort of a big text file. It's not sure what to do with it. So at least if you're working on the Mac side in Safari, let me try this again. I'll say, click here, save link file to downloads. Let's see if it did it. I'm looking for an RFA file. I'm not seeing it right offhand. So why didn't you come to my downloads folder? Let me say file linked file as. Yeah, let's put it in here. Okay. Okay. In theory now I have that file on my hard disk. So what I got to do is come back over to Revit and I will say, let's load a family. See if I can go out and find that thing. I believe I put it over here in session 4. There it is. There's my little 3-panel door. So I can either open it, and when I open it, what it'll do is it'll open it as a separate part, so you can sort of see how it's defined. Let's see if that's okay. It's kind of interesting. Oh, that should have been okay. Hang on. I'll try opening it again. That should actually work. But no, it didn't work the first time. Okay, here is that part. Kind of just as a loose part hanging around. You'll see the doors actually have not only the object that it's going to create, it actually has a placeholder for the wall that it'll be inserted in. We're going to learn how to sort of create these ourselves in another couple classes, but what we need to do is to say load it into the project. Okay, and now it's available to me. It'll be under the Doors tab. And there's the 3-panel door, so I can go ahead and put it in the wall. I'm going to show you the more direct way. The more direct way, you didn't really need to open it that way. We could have just come over here and, since we knew it was a door, said load the family, and then go out and grab it that way. But it's really just putting it on your hard disk somewhere and getting it in. Okay. Now, so Revit City, again, really cool site, all user supported, not manufacturer's information, kind of more general purpose, like crowdsourced, parts. So you'll find a lot of groovy furniture and just really interesting objects out there. The other place, though, you probably want to know about is this place, which is seek.autodesk.com. This is really a bunch of ultimately officially manufacturer authorized pieces that you may want to put in here. So I'll just see if I can find one that I was looking for the other day. I actually need one of those changing tables, like that you find in bathrooms for changing diapers and stuff like that. Nothing. What would all file types changing? I did find it in here. I got to remember where it was. Baby changing station, standard flip down table. Okay, we're hanging around here. We have them from some different manufacturers. Frost Products is one manufacturer that has them out here. The nice thing about manufacturers putting stuff out there is it makes it real easy for me to specify and download, so I might just go ahead and use theirs. So there's a very active community actually trying to pull people into supplying files that can be put here and shared. What I would do is just basically take that RFA file. Okay, it's giving me some different choices. What I want is the Revit family file, so I'm going to check on that one. I'm going to say, let's go through and download this. I have agreed to the terms and conditions. So it again is putting it in my downloads folder. So now that I have that in my downloads folder, what I need to do is go back over to Revit, and I'll say insert. Let me just load that from my downloads folder. See if I can go out and find it where I put it. That's out on my Mac side. Okay, there's some changing table flip. So what I'll do is load that in. It again is going to become available to me. Oh, that's interesting. That's really strange. It thinks of itself as a door. At least that's what it sort of indicated. Or actually, no, I think I'm still in doors right now. That's what it is. I'm in the modified place door. What I got to do is basically get myself over to components because it's considered a component. It actually does a little bit of a check. It's trying to make sure that if I'm in the doors tool, that I'm only downloading doors things. But again, let me go back out to downloads. get that baby changing table. Okay, then as a component, it's showing up over here. So I can go put it on the wall. See what's going on. That's looking very big and blocky. That's not very good looking as a 3D object. You see what it looks like in floor plan. Looks better there in terms of what's going on. That's not what I call a well-defined object. But the idea is go ahead and find objects out there that you like, pull them in, go ahead and use them. So, you know, some very interesting things are available out there on Sync. For example, let me go back out here to Seek. Let me try this. Nano wall systems. Yeah, very nice kind of wall that we actually have a lot of around here in the SEQ is these folding walls where it's all these panels that just ultimately kind of roll out and like 12 different panels completely disappear and, you know, give you a big open system. And basically, yeah, they have those sorts of systems in here. So if you want something like that, go ahead, download that file, bring it in. That is really, it's just, you know, it's all about sharing these different files. And if you find some really cool files that you want to share, actually, a lot of we should do that. Just set up some place where we can share things amongst ourselves. It's really just all about collecting libraries and ultimately sharing them with each other. And it makes everyone's life easier. So these, again, sort of are the geometric information, but there's also fields. In fact, you can sort of see some of the information about it. You know, there are fields that we can then start putting manufacturer's model number, thermal performance information, whatever we want, because it's really just a big database underneath it. No. It depends on how sophisticated the model author is. Most model objects like that, the good ones are done such that there's some parameter which can say like open or closed or to what degree, and models can respond that way. So when we start creating our own objects, that's a really cool thing. File that one away, because it'd be a good thing as you create your own object to create something that has a couple different states where programmatically you can get it to unfold or fold. You do that. That's actually a really good thing to do. Those are really smart objects, and objects definitely get smarter. Okay. Let's go back over to Revit. So this notion of walls and just sort of customizing walls. What I wanted to do next is actually sort of talk more specifically about curtain walls. Because curtain walls are sort of a very powerful element, and there's some nuance to it in terms of just how you get it set up. So if we head towards curtain walls, let's talk about curtain walls and how they're set up. Curtain walls are actually sort of a complex object. They're made up of several different pieces. There's the overall curtain wall element, the big old piece, but that's actually made up of a grid where we've broken the glass down based on some grid lines, and panels that are within those grids, and each of those different panels in the grid could be a different material if we want to. They don't all have to be glass. We can sort of change individual panels. We could also change the mullions, those metal members that are all kind of between different grid panels, and just really customize this to be whatever you want it to be. So at some level, you know, we go through and we define curtain walls, and one of the easiest ways to do it is if you can specify a pattern, you know, spacing this way, a spacing that way, and something that's very, very repeatable. And the nice things about doing pattern-based ones is no matter what happens to the wall, it gets very big, it gets very small, the pattern will repeat for you automatically. So let's go ahead and show how that works. Start over there. So for example, I am going to, let's go to 3D. Zoom on out. Okay, and I'm going to go to that big old building in the background there. It has that curved wall on it. And make a curtain wall here. Now in terms of making curtain walls, you can make curtain walls by changing existing walls into curtain walls, or you can go ahead and just draw curtain wall types and just kind of create them from scratch. Either way works. As you make a curtain wall, let's again choose a wall segment right here. If I go down and pull through the type menu to the curtain wall types, you'll see they're kind of down towards the bottom of the menu. There's curtain wall 1, exterior glazing, storefront. These are all different types, and I'll warn you, in the starting point file I gave you for the little building, there's really only one. It says like a curtain wall, and there's no gridding in it right now, but you can change the type and add some gridding to it. So in terms of those different types, let's just show you what's in the architectural template to get started with. Curtain wall 1, just a big old sheet of glass, no divisions in it. If I choose that same guy over here, and I say, let's try exterior glazing, okay. This is a curtain wall that is divided into a grid system. But if I zoom in real close, you see it's just glass. There's nothing, there's no metal, there's no supporting elements. And again, we can do this now. We used to have a harder time doing this, but it's actually kind of a very neat architectural effect if you have something that's mostly glass and just a little bit of sealant in there. Okay. If I choose that again, and I choose the storefront type, you'll see that actually has all the metal. This is the way they are constructed here around Y2E2 and here around Wong. We have all these metal elements in there. So as you're thinking about creating curtain walls, all you really have to think about is really the type parameters. Well, let's take a look at, there's instance parameters and type parameters. Let's take a look at what you can control as an instance parameter first. Okay, some things are familiar, the base, the top, any sorts of offset. You know, that's kind of the standard stuff as any old wall. Kind of an interesting element that also shows up for curtain walls is on the gridding, and we have something called the justification. I'll talk to you about that. The justification is if it's a paneled system, if there is an odd panel at the end, because it doesn't work out to be an even increment, where do you want to put the first full panel? Do you want it to be at the beginning of the wall, the end of the wall, or just split the difference between? Okay, so we can go through and choose. Right now it's set to the beginning. The beginning, so what's happening, this is a full panel, it's looking kind of good. I could go through and change that to the end. Doesn't look like it changed very much. Okay, so it must be a fairly even increment. Let's try, well, centering will be about the same. If this was a slightly different distance, you'd start seeing more of a difference there. Okay, let's go ahead and choose this. Another thing you can do is for these vertical grids, you do have the choice of going through and putting some sort of an angle in there. So for example, right now it's angled at 0, they're perfectly vertical. But if you went through and put in there like a 15 degrees or something like that, you kind of slot them all over. Okay. Actually, we see a lot of buildings doing things like that now. Okay. So you can go through and change, and it's an instance property. Let me show you what I mean by that. So that curtain wall has it. Let me change this one to a curtain wall also. We give ourselves 2 to work with. It'll be a little easier to see what's going on. Okay. That one doesn't have it. Okay, and that's because this instance has a slope to it. This one's still set at 0. Okay, so we have different kind of choices. Let me go ahead and pop that back again. We'll leave it there. That's fine for now. If you would like a different grid pattern, and this grid pattern that's set up in this curtain wall 1, where we define that, let's take a look at how it's defined. Our curtain wall storefront. It's 5-foot spacing vertically and 8-foot spacing horizontally. Okay. If you want to try some different spacing, no worries. What you'll do is very much like we do with a lot of our parts that are sort of determined by a kind of pattern. We'll duplicate that. I can make it storefront 2, or what I'll even do is kind of, just change it to, let's say, something that's more descriptive. So just give it some name which describes what you want to do, and then change the parameters. I'm going to change that to 3 feet by 3 feet. Say OK to that. Top of that. So you can change the patterns. So it's really just a type in that I can change this one over to be the 3 by 3 also. It's just another type that's in our system down there. Okay. Or change that one back to the bigger type.
I would change one that's just a plain curtain wall and add panels.
If you have something which is just a plain curtain wall, something like that one, it's going to warn me it's going to take out some pieces like that, and you want to add a grid to it, no worries. Let's choose it, and we'll edit the type. And again, let's sort of duplicate. Okay, we're going to call add some grids. And now we can start defining really what we want to have happen both vertically and horizontally. So for this one, let me make it and add some choices here. Is it a fixed distance or is it a fixed number? That would be no matter what the length is, break it into an even number of segments, some maximum or minimum spacing. That would be all about trying to keep it even but allowing a little flexibility. As long as there's 8 pieces, I don't really care whether they're 30 up to 40, but I don't want any of the pieces getting bigger than that. So I'm going to say just to stick it with a fixed distance. I'll say let's make something that's about like 4 feet wide. For horizontal, let's make them 10 feet tall. I'm doing the wrong thing. Fixed distance up there. Actually, let's try it the other way. Let's just say fixed number. Okay. Give you sort of a variation here. Okay, a little complicated. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, and I'll turn that off so that it doesn't look so tilted for you. Okay, fixed distance is 4. Fixed number actually lets you go through and gives you an instance parameter. So, these are what I say, 4 feet across. That's known. The number of grids now, fixed number, is currently an instance property. There's 2 grid lines coming across. So if I wanted to change that to, for example, just 1 grid line coming across, I could do that. Let's see if 0 will work. I always like to test the boundaries. Nope. Okay, so whatever it is, 4 in there. So for the most part, this notion, so we've divided the glass so far. Okay, that part's good. We haven't added any mullions to it. So if you want to actually have the steel start showing up, again, we'll choose the type. And mullions are down in here. You can sort of specify what you want to have here. And I usually just choose these. We can choose a small little square one if we want to. The interior, let's talk about that. The interiors it's all these ones in the center, not the top, not the bottom, but the middles. Okay. The border 1 and border 2, honestly, I never remember. I always test it and sort of see. I don't remember if border 1's top and border 2's bottom, or border 1's left and border 2's right, but it's some variation of those. So what I usually do is come up with a fairly regular system. Maybe the border should be a little bit thicker. Actually, let's answer the question as long as we're here. We'll just say none, and we'll figure out which one doesn't get the border, whether it's the top or the bottom. Okay. I'm looking. That got it. That got it. Looks like the bottom got it too, which makes me wonder, what is border 2? But we need to go to the help file and kind of check that out. Figure out why that still has that. I don't expect it to. Okay, so you can change those up, kind of really define whatever you want. Now, curtain walls defining by pattern, again, is a really good way to do it when you have a pattern over a big building and you want to change things. The big advantage, again, is if you go through and change something about the size of the building, or you just start drawing some new wall. For example, we're coming out here and we're just going to draw some new wall. And let's go ahead and just draw something really odd. We'll just go through and draw some, actually, I can even just do it from the start. Let me choose the wall type, and I'll just choose my curtain wall, and we'll even use that new one that we just created. So as I go through, I'll draw a wall, and kind of make it curvaceous. And whatever else is happening over here, we'll just keep on going. And as we go through and create that wall, okay, fortunately, the grid pattern is just kind of taking care of for us. So pattern-based has an advantage. There are times, however, when you want to start changing things around. You just don't want a big grid of glass. And some of those times are when you want to start changing out individual panels to have more of a pattern. Or even when we need to start changing the grid around so we put a door in there. Okay, so let's talk about that. So we can go through and add grids to break things up. We can go through and change the panels, edit things out. We can add mullions. We can change the panels around. There's a lot of variation in terms of what we can do. And let me just kind of demonstrate some of them because it'll sort of give you a high-level overview. To do this, let me go ahead and just pop that down over here. And I'm even going to draw another little curtain wall panel right next to it. Although this will be one of those big plain glass ones. So let's zoom on in there. Okay. If we want to start adding grids to a curtain wall panel and control where they're going to be, what you do is under the Architectural tab, you'll find there's Curtain System, Curtain Grid, and Curtain Mullion. Curtain Grid's what you're after. Curtain Grid does this. You go through and grab the tool, and you can just move along a line, one of the edges, and every time you go dropping, it'll break the glass. Okay, so that's actually pretty useful to get going. Yes?
I don't know if anyone else has this issue, but when I was trying to make, like, just test a curtain wall on my model, it would say something about not being able to close between the walls or something like that. Not being able to
There is sort of an interesting issue with curtain walls. Let's kind of show you that in terms of how they do close.
Would, like, having a partial grid like that, like on the edges, help, or?
Nah, it's really, let's talk about curtain walls and how they meet at corners. Because when curtain walls meet at corners, they tend to do pretty good. They figure out they're supposed to put a mullion in there, you get a nice corner join. That's pretty happy. So even up in this model over here, that corner's pretty happy. When curtain walls butt up against some sort of relatively straight wall segment, again, it's pretty happy. You can sort of join that in there. We could have some material. Physically, we could make a nice clean corner out of that. Where curtain walls get a little unhappy is here. Let me show you. If I take this wall, let me switch it back to a regular old wall. That's actually not a happy corner. Okay, so in terms of what's going on, we don't really bring curtain walls and solid walls together and miter them together or something like that. What almost always happens is there's a little bit of the wall that kind of wraps around the solid wall and the curtain wall will butt into it. So curtain walls, they don't like to miter unless you're mitering them with another curtain wall. Okay, so what often happens in these sort of things is if I'm trying to create a curtain wall, what I'll do is grab it, and I'll do a split, not very far in, but just a little bit in. So I have that little kind of return piece, and then I can make that more of a solid wall. So I've got a nice solid miter, and then the curtain wall kind of butting up to it. And, pay attention to some of the joins on campus. You'll see they actually sort of work more like that. So just, if we're having troubles with the joins, that's usually what it's about. Okay, so down over here on these curtain walls, gridding is actually pretty easy. You got a piece of glass, we're going to break it up into different slices, you add some grids to it. So again, under architecture, say curtain grid, I can go through and break it anywhere I want to here. Now, one time that breaking is actually really important, I warn you about this, is if you go through and create a curtain wall that's a curved wall, but you don't put any breaks in it. Let's show you what happens. So I'm going to say, let's go ahead and do that wall. It's going to be some fantastic curtain wall. That's good. I'm going to draw some nice arc. Just like this. That's what I want you looking like. Can you do it? And you get that. Okay, now hover over it for a second. This is a giant piece of glass that oh so much wants to be an arced wall. It knows that it's supposed to be an arced wall. It's waiting for permission to be an arc wall, but it knows that it can't bend itself. Unless you have like all the money of Steve Jobs and you actually can afford giant 60-foot pieces of curved glass, okay, we pretty much have to break it into segments in order to make it happen. So If you ever put a curtain wall down and this is happening, it's just staying straight. The problem is you just don't have enough gridding in it to go through and allow it to make the curve. So what you got to do is come on in there and drop some grids on it. With one grid, it would look like that. With 2 grids, 3 grids, we can start subdividing it up here. Okay? And manually, just the more grids you give it, the finer it's going to be in terms of approximating that curve. But actually, when it comes to approximating a curve, to get those nice and even, I would probably do that as a gridded pattern and let it go through and figure out, just exactly what it needs to be to follow that around. So watch out for that. Curved curtain walls, you have to grid them. Okay, once you've gridded a wall, you can go ahead and add mullions to it very easily. Mullions are right next door in the architecture tab. And to add mullions, you choose some sort of type, whether you want the big fat ones or the little skinny ones or whatever it is, and we can load in different profiles of types depending on what you want. Let's go put some circular mullions in. I haven't tried that in a while. We'll zoom on in, and when I can put them on a single grid line, there's a circular one there, a circular one there. We can switch it up if I want to, maybe go through and put rectangular ones going in that direction. Or if you really want to, you can just do it quickly. Just say all grid lines, and it'll basically get the entire wall at once. Okay, and at this point, you might recognize that your wall is kind of looking very similar to that patterned one over there. Now, the patterned one, if you just want a variation on the pattern, but for the most part it's a patterned wall, and it just has a little bit of variation, you can go ahead and have hybrids between the two. That's A-OK. So if, for example, you have this pattern over here, and maybe I just want to break a couple of the panels and change something, what I can do is go to the curtain grid tool, and instead of saying, well, I could put it across all segments, they'll actually put a split all the way up the wall in between, so I have a custom line in addition to the pattern lines. I could also do just a single segment, which will be, I'm just going to break that panel. And I'm just going to break that panel. And I'm just going to break that panel. So you can go ahead and create custom patterns. It's warning me that it's trying to create a mullion across the entire surface, but then breaking them out. So I can go through and kind of adjust things like that. Similarly, I can take out panels if I want to. If I don't want to have a grid line, I can go to the grid tool. I can say that, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Okay, remember that thing about tabbing, okay, and going through and selecting things. If I want to grab a grid line and delete it, okay, when I hover over the wall first, it gets the entire wall. So a little too much. I don't want to delete all that. If I get myself hovered right over one of the grids, it might actually select it. Actually, I got the mullion right now. But if I want to rotate through different options and kind of get to the grid line, what I can do is, again, just tap to tab, okay, tap, chain of walls. Okay, now I actually have the grid line. It took 3 taps to get it, but the grid line is actually selected now. So I can choose it. And now I can add or remove segments to it. So I might be able to knock that one out right there. So you can customize these as much as you want to. In addition to changing the gridding pattern, some other things you can do in terms of adjusting and adapting your curtain walls are, we can change out the panels. Like if you go looking around even at the buildings here, you'll see that having a full wall of glass isn't always what you want, especially if you have a bathroom or some service area on the other side of the glass. You may want some relatively translucent or opaque panels in there, or you might want to put some metal panels or some stone panels. You really have a lot of architectural variations you can put in there. So if you don't want glass on all your panels, we can also go through and change the individual panel. Okay, panels are just another type of object. So here's how you do that. If you go hovering over your wall, okay, and that's right over the mullion right now, and I will tap once to tab, okay, whole wall. Tap again, grid line. Okay, not quite there, don't give up. Tab one more, panel. Lower panel, may have been the one I wanted, maybe not. Tab again, upper panel. Okay, got it. And click. Okay, that's selected. And you'll see it's this thing called a system panel glazed. And if a glazed panel is what you have in mind, that is super. But if you want to change it to either a solid panel, we could do that and kind of make it a solid. You know, if you have a specific material you want to put in there, like you're going to make some, fantastic Mondrian print of different panels and different colors, what I can do is I'll grab another panel. Okay, I'm going to go over to the solids. Okay. The solid panel I have chosen right now, it's kind of this grayish color. Okay. Close, but not quite what I have in mind. I would like something that is very similar to what I have selected, but it's a little bit different in one of its properties. Okay? That ought to start sounding familiar as a way of kind of doing things. Whenever I have that, it's very similar, but I want to change one of the properties, you might think about it having a type, and we can edit that type. So there's a system panel, a solid type panel, and that's cool. But if I don't want it to be the default material, if I want it to be some blue or some yellow material or something like that, what I can do is duplicate this. I'm just going to call it solid yellow. Okay, solid yellow is just like solid plain, except that it needs a different material to kind of have the right appearance. So what I'll do is I'll go to the material property, take a look at that. I can give it some material like copper or some specific material that has like a physical appearance that way. If I just want a painted thing, let me see if I can actually find paint in here. If I can spell parking stripe. Well, that would actually get yellow, but that's not exactly what I have in mind. Let's see what I got in here. This is project materials. Hang on. Let me go to the paint section. That's all I got is parking stripe. Well, no worries. We'll make our own. I'm going to say duplicate that or create that. Either way, duplicate would take the copies. Create new would just give me a new blank one. Either one. Okay. I'm going to rename this thing. I'm going to call it yellow panel. Give it whatever appearance I want. So if that's lemon yellow, make it a little bit different so you can sort of see the difference. Forgive me, that's not exactly yellow. Okay, I can give it a pattern if I want to. If I want it to have some, kind of like tile-ish pattern, that's fine. So I have a new material, it's yellow. I'll say okay. And what will happen now is it'll apply it there, and that panel will be that. So I can switch in and out any panel to give it that new panel type. So again, if I wanted to go through and make this little guy over here a yellow panel, I could do that. Okay, so curtain walls, grids, sort of panels, how's that feel? Relatively good? It's not the copy tool. Actually, let's see if I can do this. There's another tool which is called matching properties, and I hardly ever use it, so you're going to get me in trouble, but I'll see if I can do it. It's right up here. Match converts one or more elements to match the type of another. Okay, so let's see if I can make this work right. What I'll do is actually choose the tool. Okay, you should pay attention. This will actually help me. Select an object to copy its type. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click over it and grab that yellow panel. Okay. Now select an object to change its type. Not too bad. Thank you. You've taught me something today. Okay, so that's a quickie way of grabbing panels and kind of popping around. Okay, let us do this. Let us pause to refresh. Come on back in again about 10 minutes. When you come on back, we'll show you an important variation on this. It's the ever popular question, I got a great curtain wall, but how do I get a door into it? Okay, and there's a little trick you need to know about to actually put a door in this curtain wall. So we'll continue with that, and then do our floors and roofs. So please come on back, try to be back by 10:10, and we'll get going again.